The rain came down hard that evening, the kind that makes a city feel colder than it really is. I sat in the back of an Uber, watching water slide down the window in slow lines, my reflection blurred and tired. My name is Marissa Cole. I am 35 years old, and for the past 10 years, I have been the one carrying the weight of my marriage. I work as a senior operations manager in Seattle. My days are filled with deadlines, negotiations, and decisions that affect hundreds of people. I learned long ago how to stay calm under pressure, how to swallow exhaustion and keep moving forward. At home, I did the same thing. I paid the bills. I supported my husband Derek while he chased promotions and talked about his potential. I told myself this was partnership. I told myself love meant sacrifice. That night I was not supposed to be home yet. My business trip ended a day early. A brutal contract I had been fighting for months was finally signed. I felt relief, even pride. On the drive home, I imagined cooking dinner, sitting across from my husband, and hearing him say he was proud of me. The Uber stopped in the underground garage of our building. I pulled my suitcase toward my reserved parking spot, space B15. I had paid a lot of money for that spot, and it was always empty when I traveled. It was not empty that night. A cherry red Mustang sat there, polished and unmistakable. I stopped walking and stared at the license plate until my chest felt tight. It belonged to Brooke Lane. Brooke was my sister-in-law, the wife of my younger brother, Ethan. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Ethan was working out of town. Brooke had no reason to be here. That was the moment my life quietly cracked in two, even before I knew why. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. One strange detail does not equal betrayal. I repeated that thought as I dragged my suitcase toward the elevator, the wheels echoing too loudly in the empty garage. My hands were steady, but my stomach was not. The elevator ride to the 18th floor felt longer than usual. In the mirror, I barely recognized myself. A woman in a tailored business suit, hair neat, posture straight, but with shadows under her eyes from too many sleepless nights. I wondered, not for the first time, when Derek had last really looked at me. The hallway was silent when the doors opened. No voices, no movement. I walked softly, almost instinctively, toward our condo. I did not ring the bell. I did not call out. I placed my finger on the biometric lock. The door opened with a quiet click. Inside, the lights were dim. The curtains were drawn. The familiar scent of lavender filled the air, but underneath it was something else, something sweeter, unfamiliar. I slipped off my heels, ready to call Derek's name. Then I heard it. A sound from the bedroom, not the television, not music. A woman's breathless moan, mixed with a man's low voice. My body froze. Every muscle locked as if I had been turned to stone. I moved closer, slowly, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure they could hear it. The bedroom door was slightly open. Light spilled into the hallway. Through that narrow gap I saw my bed, the charcoal gray sheets I had put on before leaving. Two bodies were tangled together. The woman was Brooke. For a split second, my vision blurred. I felt heat rush to my head, then a strange, icy calm took over. I heard Derek's voice clearly, careless and cruel, saying words that cut deeper than the act itself. He laughed and said I was boring, that I only knew how to make money. In that moment, something inside me shut down. I did not scream. I did not burst in. I did not cry. I pulled out my phone and turned on the camera. My hands shook, but I held them steady. 2 minutes. I recorded enough to leave no room for denial. Then I stepped back, quietly closed the door, took my suitcase, and walked out of the apartment like a ghost. Some people think strength is yelling. That night, strength was leaving without being seen. I do not remember how I got out of the building. I only remember sitting in the Uber, my whole body shaking, my teeth clenched so hard my jaw hurt. I asked the driver to take me to Jenna Price's place. Jenna was my best friend and, more importantly, a lawyer. If I stayed alone, I knew I would break. When Jenna opened the door and saw me standing there with a suitcase and a hollow face, she did not ask questions. She pulled me inside and handed me a glass of water. When I showed her the video, her expression changed from shock to pure focus. "Marissa," she said calmly, "do not confront them. Not yet. If you explode, you lose. You lose control, dignity, and assets. You need to stay calm and let them destroy themselves." I slept a few hours on her couch. Not real sleep, but enough to steady my hands. Before midnight, I returned home. This time I opened the door loudly. I let the suitcase wheels scrape across the floor and called out in a cheerful voice, "Honey, I'm home. Derek appeared almost instantly, already in pajamas, his hair still slightly messy. He smiled too widely, his eyes searching my face. "You're back early," he said, reaching for my suitcase. "Why didn't you call me? I would have picked you up." I smiled and touched his arm. "The project ended early. I wanted to surprise you." He hugged me. His body felt stiff. I smelled it again, the same sweet perfume clinging to him. I stepped back and pretended to yawn. "I'm exhausted. I'm going to shower and sleep." In the bedroom, everything looked unnaturally neat. The sheets were not the dark gray ones I remembered. They were cheap pink cotton, the kind I had shoved to the back of the closet years ago. I raised an eyebrow. "Why did you change the sheets?" Derek froze for half a second. "I spilled coffee on the bed while watching TV. Had to wash them." The lie was clumsy, almost insulting. I nodded and smiled. "You're so careless." In the shower, I stared at my reflection. No tears came, just a quiet decision forming in my chest. At 2 a.m, Derek's breathing became deep and steady. I rolled onto my side and gently lifted his hand. I placed his thumb on his phone. The screen unlocked. His messages were spotless. Too spotless. I went into the app settings and found a hidden folder disguised as a work app. It required a code. I tried his birthday. Nothing. Our anniversary. Nothing. Then I typed Brooke's birthday. It opened instantly. My stomach turned as I scrolled through explicit messages and photos. Then I checked his banking app. Transfer after transfer. Thousands of dollars labeled with pet names. A $10,000 charge at a luxury jewelry store. I took screenshots of everything and sent them to myself. Then I erased every trace of my access. I lay back down, staring at the ceiling, my body cold and rigid. The marriage was already dead. I was just preparing the burial. The next morning I woke up before Derek and made breakfast like I always did. Coffee, toast, eggs. My movements were calm, almost automatic. Inside, everything felt distant, as if I were watching my own life from behind glass. When Derek sat at the table, he smiled at me like nothing had happened. I studied his face while he ate, noticing how easily he slipped back into routine. That was when I understood something important. Betrayal does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks comfortable. Later that day, I met Jenna for lunch. She listened carefully as I showed her the screenshots and the video again. When I finished, she leaned back and said, "You need more than emotion. You need structure. Proof that stands on its own." That was how I met Miles Carter. Miles was a private investigator in his 40s, quiet, methodical, and respectful. He did not react with shock when I explained the situation. He simply asked questions. Dates, times, locations, patterns. Then he nodded and said, "Give me a week." A few days later, he handed me a thick envelope. Inside were photos. Derek and Brooke sitting in small cafes during lunch hours, holding hands, laughing. In one photo, Derek wiped sauce from Brooke's mouth with a tenderness I had not felt in years. In others, they entered a cheap motel on the outskirts of town and left an hour later, their clothes wrinkled, their faces relaxed. I felt sick, but I did not cry. I thanked Miles and paid him. This was not about pain anymore. It was about clarity. That weekend, I decided to test Derek. During dinner, I spoke casually. "I saw a piece of land outside the city today. The price is good. I was thinking we could take some of our savings and invest." The color drained from his face. He hesitated, then said, "The market is terrible right now. Buying land would be risky." I smiled. "We have enough saved. Maybe 100,000 to start." His hand trembled slightly. "Actually," he said slowly, "I invested our savings in the stock market. It dropped. I can't pull the money out now." It was the oldest lie in the book. I sighed and looked disappointed. "You should have told me." He relaxed, thinking he had escaped. He did not know that every word only confirmed what I already knew. The final piece came at a family lunch. My parents hosted as they always did. My brother Ethan was there, tired from work but smiling. Brooke arrived dressed beautifully, wearing a white gold necklace with a small diamond that caught the light. I recognized it immediately. $10,000. Derek's money. My money. I smiled and said lightly, "That necklace is beautiful. Is it new?" Brooke froze for half a second, then laughed and said it was cheap costume jewelry. I nodded. "It looks expensive. It suits you." As I watched her lie in front of everyone, I understood something clearly. This was not a mistake. This was a choice. And choices have consequences. After the family lunch, I became very calm. Too calm, according to Derek. I spoke less. I listened more. I watched how fear slowly crept into his habits. He checked his phone constantly. He jumped when notifications appeared. Guilt had started to live inside him. The opportunity I needed arrived sooner than expected. Derek's company announced its annual Client Appreciation Gala. Executives and their spouses were expected to attend. Appearances mattered there. Reputation mattered even more. I accepted the invitation without hesitation. On the night of the event, I chose a navy blue dress, simple, elegant, nothing loud. I was not there to attract attention. I was there to be seen, to exist, to remind people that I was not invisible. The ballroom was filled with soft music and polite laughter. Derek played the role of the attentive husband, his hand resting lightly on my back, his smile fixed. I could feel his tension through his skin. I excused myself to get a drink and approached a woman named Laura Whitman, the deputy director's wife. Laura was friendly, observant, and known for talking a little too much. We exchanged compliments. We laughed about work stress and long marriages. Then I sighed softly. Laura leaned closer. "Are you okay, Marisa? You seem distracted." I hesitated just enough to make it feel unplanned. "It's nothing. Probably my imagination. I shouldn't even mention it." That was all it took. Laura's eyes lit up with concern. "Mention what?" I lowered my voice. "Please don't repeat this. I trust Derek completely. But while I was traveling, the doorman mentioned seeing Derek's car late at night, always with a woman. Someone said she looked like my sister-in-law. I'm sure it's nothing. People talk." I rushed to defend him. "He's a good man. A little boring, honestly. He wouldn't do something like that." The more I defended him, the more convinced Laura became. She squeezed my hand. "You're too kind. In this world, kindness gets hurt. Don't worry. I'll keep an eye out." I thanked her and walked away. By the end of the night, I could feel it. The shift, the glances, the pauses in conversation when Derek walked by, the whispers that stopped when we approached. Derek noticed it too. 2 days later, he came home late, smelling of alcohol. He threw his briefcase on the couch and cursed under his breath. "People are saying things at work," he snapped. "Stupid rumors." I poured him water and sat beside him, my voice gentle. "Rumors about what?" He studied my face carefully. "About me. About having an affair." I frowned slightly. "That's ridiculous. If you're innocent, why worry? People always talk. The more you defend yourself, the more suspicious it looks." The words hit him harder than I expected. His hands began to shake. That night, he barely slept. He kept checking his phone, typing messages and deleting them. Fear had replaced confidence. And fear makes people careless. The following weekend, my parents invited everyone over for lunch. Nothing formal. Just home-cooked food and family noise. I agreed immediately. I already knew this gathering would change everything. When we arrived, my younger brother Ethan was already there, carrying bags of groceries, his jacket dusty from work. He smiled easily, the way men do when life still feels honest. Brooke arrived shortly after, unusually dressed up, her makeup perfect, her posture stiff. She barely met my eyes. Lunch started warmly. My mother fussed over everyone. My father poured drinks. Ethan talked about work, about future plans, about building a better life. He looked at his wife with open affection. Halfway through the meal, Brooke put down her fork. The sound was sharp and sudden. "I have something to tell everyone," she said, her voice trembling. The room fell silent. "I'm pregnant." The reaction was immediate. My parents gasped, then smiled. My mother stood up to hug her. Ethan froze for a second, then laughed in disbelief and joy. "I'm going to be a dad," he said, his voice breaking. Everyone celebrated. Everyone except Derek. I watched his face lose all color. His glass slipped from his hand and hit the table with a dull sound. Sweat appeared at his hairline. He could not hide it. I raised my glass calmly. "Congratulations, Brooke," I said softly. "That's wonderful news. Make sure you go to all your checkups. Knowing the exact number of weeks is important." Her eyes flicked toward me, then away. She nodded too quickly. On the drive home, the car was filled with a heavy silence. Derek's hands were tight on the steering wheel. His knuckles were white. I leaned back and spoke casually. It's surprising, isn't it? Ethan is always away for work. Life really finds its timing. Derek swallowed. These things happen. I smiled slightly. Of course, technology is amazing now. Doctors can tell almost exactly when conception happened. It helps avoid misunderstandings. He did not answer. That night, I made my next move. I told Derek gently that I had seen Brooke earlier, and she seemed anxious. She kept crying, I said. She said someone was pressuring her to end the pregnancy. I didn't understand. His cigarette fell from his hand. What did she say? He asked too quickly. I don't know, I replied. It worried me. Later, from a fake account, I sent Brooke a simple message. Your lover is looking for a way out. Protect yourself. From that moment on, their alliance cracked. One feared exposure, the other feared abandonment. And fear turns lovers into enemies. 2 days later, Derek left work early, claiming he had an urgent meeting. He did not head downtown. I knew that because the tracker I had quietly placed in his car months earlier lit up on my phone. His car was moving fast away from the city toward a cluster of secluded restaurants on the outskirts. I followed at a safe distance, my hands steady on the wheel. It started to rain again, thin and cold, blurring the road ahead. Derek parked outside a hidden lounge called Lotus House, the kind of place with private booths and no questions asked. 15 minutes later, a rideshare pulled up. Brooke stepped out wearing a mask and a hood despite the mild weather. She looked around nervously before rushing inside. I did not go in. Instead, I took out my phone and sent a message from an anonymous number. Your wife Brooke is with Derek Cole at Lotus House, VIP Booth 3. If you want to know the truth about the baby, come now. Ethan was working on a construction site when he received the message. At first, he stared at the screen in disbelief. Then he called Brooke. No answer. He called Derek, straight to voicemail. That silence was louder than any confession. When Ethan arrived at the lounge, he was soaked from the rain, his face pale and wild. He did not ask for directions. He stormed down the hallway until he reached booth 3. From inside, he heard shouting. Brooke was crying. Derek's voice was sharp and angry. Ethan kicked the door open. Inside, Brooke was on the floor, sobbing. Derek stood over her, holding a stack of cash in his hand. They both froze when they saw Ethan. Why? Ethan shouted. Why you too? Derek tried to speak. Brooke tried to crawl toward him. Everything collapsed at once. Ethan grabbed Derek by the collar and slammed him against the wall. He punched him once. Just once. Blood spilled from Derek's nose. I stepped into the room then. That's enough, I said calmly. Ethan, stop. This isn't worth ruining your life. They all turned to look at me. I met Derek's eyes without anger, only certainty. The truth is out, I said, and this is where it ends. The room smelled like rain, sweat, and panic. Brooke was crying on the floor. Derek sat slumped in a chair, holding his bleeding nose. Ethan stood frozen, his whole body shaking as if the anger had finally drained out of him. I walked to Ethan and put my hand on his shoulder. Let's go, I said quietly. Staying here will only poison you. He looked at me, his eyes empty and broken, then nodded. We left without another word. That night, Ethan stayed at Jenna's apartment. There I showed him everything. The video, the messages, the bank transfers. He watched in silence, his face turning gray. When it was over, he went to the bathroom and threw up. When he came back, something in him had hardened. I want a divorce, he said, immediately. The next morning, Jenna moved fast. Divorce papers were prepared. At the same time, she filed a formal complaint with Derek's company, attaching the evidence of financial misconduct and kickbacks he had hidden for years. The reaction was swift. Derek was called into an emergency meeting. He was suspended without pay and escorted out of the building by security in front of his coworkers. His name spread through the office like a warning label. That same afternoon, the bank contacted me. 6 months earlier, Derek had secretly mortgaged our condo, $300,000. I remembered the papers he had asked me to sign without explanation. Trust had blinded me. When I confronted him, he broke down. He begged me to save him. There is no us, I told him. I will sell the condo, clear the debt, and you will leave with nothing. He signed the divorce papers that day. The marriage ended not with shouting but with paperwork and silence. After everything ended, I sold the condo. I paid off the debt and walked away from a place filled with lies. I bought a small house outside the city with a garden and quiet mornings. My parents moved in. Ethan came too, carrying his pain but also his resolve to start over. Life did not magically become perfect, but it became honest. Ethan found a new job. He laughed again, slowly. I returned to my work with clearer eyes and stronger boundaries. I slept through the night for the first time in years. Here is what I learned. Love without respect becomes unpaid labor. Trust without boundaries becomes permission. Staying calm is not weakness, it is strategy. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to like and share it. Tell me in the comments where you are listening from and whether you have ever stayed silent when you wanted to scream. Subscribe for more real-life stories. I will see you in the next one.
My name is Valerie Brooks. I was 50 years old when my husband